We're live whenever you're ready to go.
Thank you. And so I will call to order this meeting of the Corporate and Community Services Committee of the Town of Collingwood. It is September the 14th and 3 o'clock. This is a meeting to replace or to take up where we left off when we lost electricity on Monday, the 7th of September. And so I call the meeting to order by saying that for more than 15,000 years, the First Nations walked upon and cared for the lands we now call home. The Anishinaabek, the Haudenosaunee, the Ojibwe, and many others who cared for their families and communities the way we now seek to care for ours. The town of Collingwood acknowledges the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818 and respects the nation-to-nation agreements that have formed relationships with the original inhabitants of Turtle Island, the reality of our shared history, the current contributions of Indigenous people within our community, and we seek to continue empowering expressions of pride amongst all the diverse stakeholders in this area. We seek to do better, to continue to recognize, to learn, to grow in friendship and community, nation to nation. I will look for an adoption of the agenda now, and the motion I'm looking for is that the content of the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee agenda for September 14, 2021 be adopted as presented. Do I have a mover and a seconder on that? Councillor Berman and Mayor Saunderson. Any discussion? And so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest from the members at this meeting? Seeing none, we move to business arising from the previous minutes. Is there any business arising from the previous minutes? And seeing none again, we move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is staff reports. And the first one on today's agenda, if you're using the agenda from September 7th, you will find the numbering to have been to be different. So you will need the current agenda. Item number 5.1 is staff report T 2021-15, which is BIA COVID-19 Relief Program Initiative Review. And I believe we are looking to Treasurer Monica Quinlan for a presentation of that staff report. Do we have Treasurer Quinlan with us this afternoon? She's usually quicker than this. I don't see her on the list, actually. Shall we defer this item until she arrives? We didn't do that during the adoption of the agenda, but I think that we can get a motion to defer and put that off to the end of the meeting. Or what should we do here, Clerk Almas? I look to you for some advice.
Certainly, as chair, we're welcome just to move on to the next one, and then we can come back to that. So we can just change the order. So we can deal with the PRC reports first.
Terrific. That means we're looking to Director Culver, and the first report from PRC is staff report PRC 2021-06, Herbert Wilson Legacy. And I will ask Director Culver to speak to this one.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just pulling up the report so that I can have it in my field of view here. So this is a story that goes back well over 65 years, truthfully, but staff became aware of it or caught up to it about 5 or 6 years ago, and since then have I think done a lot of work. I think the council has supported a lot of work being done to understand the effects of racism and the effects of discrimination upon our community. Ultimately, it has led us here today where we're putting a recommendation in front of you to acknowledge a part of Collingwood's history related to an incident surrounded by racism. And to not sort of, pick the report and reread it to you, which I'm sure you already have read it. But effectively what happened was about a little over 65 years ago, an employee of the town of Collingwood, Collingwood's first Black supervisor, was killed on the job in an incident that involved him falling from a tree at the corner of Maple and 6th Street. There were incidences prior to and actions afterwards that leave a lot of understanding that this may have been and may even likely have been racially motivated. Aside from a life being taken from his family, Collingwood didn't live up to the standards we're holding ourselves to today. And so for that reason, we feel like that some closure should be sought, that the community should come full circle, create a testament to this event that happened in our history, acknowledge when racism has a play in the things that happen in our community, and create a memorial that can be a part of the placemaking in Collingwood that'll mean it's not forgotten. In addition to that, we're recommending that a park that's slated to be developed adjacent to the Admiral Collingwood School carry the name Wilson Sheffield as an acknowledgement not only of the legacy of Herbert Wilson, but also in recognition of the Black history of our community. And that goes back actually before incorporation, before the Underground Railroad and our identity as a terminus on that railroad. There's a lot of unknown and unheard of stories in our community around the Black experience that we feel need to be represented and told in our community, and the park would create that opportunity. We do have one other park, J.J. Cooper Park, which is named after an individual of color, and most people don't know the story behind J.J. Cooper and wouldn't know. So we're actually looking at this as an opportunity to start a new trend where a naming comes with context and we apply some understanding. So we'd be looking to create not only information available at the Wilson Sheffield Park, but also the J.J. Cooper Park and all the parks that carry a name, so that there's an understanding of the reference associated. So I think that's sort of a bit of a rough summary. I would say maybe overly rough summary, but I'll leave it there and maybe open it for questions from the committee as needed.
Thank you, Director Culver. And I'm looking to see, and there are 0 attendees at this meeting. So I don't think I need to ask for public participation because there is no one who has joined seeking to participate. Therefore, I will turn it over to the committee to see if any of the committee members have comments or questions on staff. I guess I got to put it on the floor first, don't I? So I'm going to need a mover and a seconder for staff report T 2021-15. PRC 2021-06. Herbert Wilson legacy be received, and the council approve the naming of parklands adjacent to the Admiral Collingwood Public School and bordered by Day Drive and Kirby Avenue, the Wilson Sheffield Park, in recognition not only of the contributions of these Collingwood families and a history that dates back to the Underground Railroad, but specifically the contribution of the Wilson family via the legacy left by Herbert Wilson. And the council approve a budget upset limit of $35,000 to support the installation of a memorial in the boulevard of 6th Street near Maple Street. Such memorial to be established in consultation with Carolyn and Sylvia Wilson and in recognition of the story represented by their father's passing and the historical lesson we hope to never forget as we continually reach for inclusion. And that is moved by Mayor Saunderson and seconded by Councillor Berman. Are there any comments or questions on this staff report? Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I've had an opportunity to speak with both Carolyn and Sylvia Wilson about this incident, and it is a terrible and tragic moment in Collingwood's history. I think this recognition is an important step, not only to bring this full circle for the Wilson family, but also for our community. And it's, I think, worth noting the incredible contribution that Herbert's family has made to our community. Not only was he our first Black foreman, but also Sylvia and Carolyn are extremely accomplished individuals who have brought a great deal to our community fabric. They're both members of the Order of Collingwood and the companion to the Order, and we're both named in the top 100 Black women in Canada. Sylvia, I think, in 2019, and Carolyn in 2016. So they have brought an incredible depth to our community, and with the Unity Collective and the efforts that we've gone through since Black Lives Matter, they have played an integral part of that, and they continue to play an integral part of that, both long before we got on board with that, but since it has been created as well. And they are the custodians, owners and custodians of the Sheffield Black History and Cultural Museum. So they brought a great deal to our community, and I think this acknowledgement is very important for us in our steps to move forward and to bring closure to the Wilson family for this terrible and tragic event. And I would like to ask a question of Director Culver through you. Dean, I'm wondering if we could add to this. I don't see it in here, and I would look for direction from you, but I'd like to see us add that we would, on behalf of the town, be making an apology to the Wilson family for this event as part of the action items here. It's not included in the report, and I'm wondering if that's something that we should be adding to the action items.
Director Culver?
Through you, Chair. Certainly, I think that's a wonderful idea. I feel like it wouldn't be within the purview of staff to make that kind of recommendation. However, I'm super grateful that that the committee is considering it because I do think an apology is warranted, given that this was an employee of the town, and there was a great deal of difficulty in even achieving the records needed following his passing, and I feel like the town, potentially played an obstructive role at that time. So I feel an apology is absolutely warranted, and hopefully it's received and appreciated by the Wilson family.
Thank you. And then, Madam Chair, I would like to move an amendment that we add an apology to our action items for the reasons that Director Culver has recognized, namely that this was a town employee who died in the line of duty, and also the circumstances surrounding it and how it's come to light. There certainly seems to be strong indication of racial overtones, and I think that we as a community owe an apology to the Wilson family. So I would be moving that, please.
Do you have a seconder? There's a seconder, Councillor Berman. Any comments or questions from the rest of the committee? Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to look to see if I can get a smirk out of the mayor here, but Director Culver, I'm a big believer in the expression that it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. So thank you very much for bringing forward this report and making me feel good about that belief.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Seeing none, I will call the question on the amendment to the main motion. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimously. And then the amended motion, questions and comments have been had. And so I'll call the question on the motion as amended on PRC 2021-06, the Herbert Wilson legacy. All those in favor? Excellent. Thank you so much. That passes unanimously. I think we will give Director Culver a break to catch his breath, and we will return to item number 5.1 on our agenda today, and that is Staff Report T 2021-15, which is COVID-19, a BIA COVID-19 Relief Program Initiative Review. And I see that Treasurer Quinlan has resolved her technical difficulties. At least we hope so. And I will ask her to present to us this staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry about that. I was on and then it just kicked me out for some reason. So I appreciate that we carried on with another report. The report that you have in front of you was in response to a consent agenda item from back in March from the BIA. Essentially, that consent agenda item was a letter from the BIA just laying out the details of a COVID-19 relief program that occurred in the city of Calgary. Essentially, what they had done was use their Safe Restart funding to provide their BIA members with a one-time credit towards their levy. And that was in the amount of about $4 million. The town of Collingwood has received a total of just over $1.8 million in Safe Restart funding. And to this point, the majority of that, or most of that, has already been allocated to other divisions. That being said, given we are only partway through the year, it's possible that those forecasted amounts could change and that a small amount at some point could be applied towards the BIA. So what staff is recommending or would commit to is the review of any remaining unallocated funds available late this fall and report back to council if opportunities were to exist at that point.
Thank you. And so seeing no attendees have joined us in the interim, I will turn to the committee and to get it on the table. The motion is that staff report T 2021-15 BIA COVID-19 Relief Program Initiative Review be received, and further that staff report back to council if a future opportunity exists for potential reimbursement of certain BIA costs that would be applicable to the provincial COVID-19 funding requirements. And I will need a mover and a seconder for that motion. Moved by Councillor Berman, seconded by Mayor Saunderson. Questions or comments? I saw a yellow card while I was reading, but I don't know to whom it belonged. No, okay, never mind. Something flying in my peripheral vision. Any comments or questions from members of the committee regarding this, this report and the recommendation on the table? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Treasurer Quinlan. And we turn back to Director Culver now for item 5.3 on the agenda today, which is staff report PRC 2021-07, supporting and inclusive change. Director Culver.
Thank you, Chair. So this report also has a history that's sort of longer than recent times. It kind of realistically goes back to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and some new learnings and understandings we have about the effects of things like stereotypes and moving forward in time around 2018 or 2019. We began to have a conversation with minor hockey about the logo, the Blackhawks logo that they were using at the time, provided them some research that showed why it was not an effective or an inclusive symbol to use. It's obviously a huge undertaking to turn over an entire league's branding. So it took the time it needed to take in order for minor hockey to get itself to the place where it could make this change. It was helped along the way by a letter from the Human Rights Tribunal that talked about a decision in Mississauga over the exact same logo and how it was found to be offensive due to stereotyping. And I'm grateful to say that the minor hockey group did take on this project of changing over the brand away from the Blackhawks logo, which is worn by the Chicago Blackhawks, and towards an inclusive logo, actually married with the Collingwood Blues junior hockey team. The cost that I put in the report for this changeover was about $75,000. I actually recently, as of yesterday, have discovered or now know that it's actually in the neighborhood of $90,000 that the cost that was actually taken on by the organization. The reason why we're bringing this report forward in support is that the change is not hockey based, it's community based. It actually does something for the community, and that we felt that there should be a contribution by the community towards this change. That $90,000 bill will be borne by the parents and people who support minor hockey. So this contribution is really about just a minor offset in a way to recognize that this is a change towards inclusion, and the methods by which we thought that it could be accomplished would be through a rebate of their 2022 ice fees. Typically, they put about $160,000 in annually on average towards ice rates. So this would be a rebate in the 2022 year of $30,000. We're also asking for this to be considered as a part of the budget envelope, recognizing that, you know, council has decisions to make around budget, but as a revenue item, we hope that it can be supported.
Thank you. Seeing no one in the audience still, I'm going to turn to the committee and look for a mover and seconder for PRC 2021-07 staff report supporting an inclusive change be received, and that council consider a rebate of $30,000 on the final invoice of the Collingwood minor hockey 2021-22 season in support of their expense to change their league logo in accordance with a more inclusive community approach. Such consideration to be part of the 2022 budget deliberations, and that council make a condition of this support that the materials left in the possession of the Minor Hockey Association that bear the previous logo be either destroyed or have the logo removed prior to ongoing use or disposal to prevent the continued distribution of the logo in the community. And I see a mover, Councillor Berman, and a seconder, Mayor Saunderson. Questions, comments, queries from the committee on this item? Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Dean, more just a comment. I wanted to give a shout out to minor hockey for undertaking this change prior to this year, and to branding with the junior A team, the Collingwood Blues. And as this council knows, with the discovery of the unmarked graves, we passed a motion to have AMO advocate to the federal, provincial and federal governments about pursuing the 94 calls to action, and the fact that this is one of those calls to action, I think brings it sharply into focus for us. So I am absolutely in support of this. And again, I want to thank minor hockey for their leadership in going through the rebranding process. And so that I think this is an appropriate show of support because those teams are ambassadors for our community wherever they go and play. So I think it's important that we put the proper face forward on this and acknowledge that that the previous name had harmful effects.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. And so my only comment on this is that we appear to be following a trend in inclusivity that is North America wide. I'm thinking about the football team from Washington and the football team from Edmonton and the baseball team from Cleveland, and the actions that they have taken, which are similar to this. And so I would suggest that we are in good company trying to right some wrongs. And so I will call the question. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Director Culver. We move on to reports and minutes of other committees and boards. That is item 6 on today's agenda. And the motion is that the minutes of the various committees and boards provided below be received and recommendations contained therein be approved. And I did notice, I will look for some advice from Clerk Olmis, because in the minutes of the Collingwood Downtown BIA Board of Management from August the 12th, there is actually a motion contained under their, in those minutes, item number 6.3, and I don't have it at my fingertips, but there is definitely a motion there.
Certainly, Chair McLeod, I can speak to the item. So if this recommendation is approved, it will provide requesting a waiver of parking fee spaces for the World Car Free Day in September. And they're looking for a few spaces in each of the blocks along here Ontario Street within the downtown, which the BIA supported. And they're looking for council's endorsement of the waiver of those fees. I believe it is approximately $10 per space per day, around that amount.
Okay, thank you. And so I will need a mover and a seconder to accept these boards, these minutes and so on, and this particular motion as well. Councillor Comey and Mayor Saunderson. Questions or comments regarding this? Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wondered if the CAO could weigh in on this, as it's in the minutes, so she knows more about it than we do.
Through the chair to Councillor Berman. You mean the item around the waiving of, yes, I'm in full support. I think it's in line with our declaration of a climate emergency and showing a number of parking spots full of bicycles and folks milling around the downtown, hopefully using our businesses and promoting their own health through active transportation would be something that I think is very much in line with our vision of the community and the strategic plan. And the any cost to the town would be minor in comparison with the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Skinner. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Chair McLeod. So to clarify, I wanted to offer, I had a question about the budget recommendations from the Trails Committee. Or can I pull that at this time, or are we focused on the BIA recommendations?
No, we can definitely pull that for discussion. Absolutely.
Okay, so it's a question through you to Director Culver, please. So it's in reference to the budget recommendations from the Active Transportation and Trails Committee. And just the first comment I'm going to offer is, I'm sure everybody's had a look. They really did a lovely job. It's like, I mean, it's aesthetically beautiful and very professionally done. So if they did that, if they took the time to do that, I mean, they really should be recognized, because it really would have taken a considerable amount of time. So in addition to that compliment, my question is, could you please tell me, are these recommendations going to make it over to council for consideration in our budget review?
Director Culver?
Sorry, through you, Chair. So the typical process is that this advice would go into our budget discussions. So it would make it to the staff level, where the staff basically look at it in a broader scope of priority. So so that's the process by which they would ultimately make it to council. It would be through that discussion, like, for example, the discussion that was had at the last SIC, where it was discussed that there'd be a 1% tax rate increase, or not more than 1% tax rate increase. So the things have to fit into those priorities that are finally submitted to council. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is, in the context of everything that has to be considered within a holistic budget for the town, is how it will end up there.
Does that assist, Councillor Comey?
Yes, thank you. I suppose because I always, and I no doubt Director Culver, you noted too, I mean, we have a number of things that would fall to Director Slama, because there's a number of asks for crossings that, I mean, at least I think we would all agree, you know, based on experience and observation, you know, seem, you know, more than reasonable in their request for anyone, you know, who's tried to cross at any of these locations. And I'm sure we can anticipate hearing more from you, you know, on the Hens and Chicken Trail, even though it's been a great adventure crossing it without the bridge on the other side. I know it doesn't exactly make it accessible, you know, to many people, but all right, it does answer it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I will call the question, and that I did have a mover and a seconder on that, didn't I? So I will call the question on receiving these reports. All those in favor? That passes unanimously, which moves us on to item number 7, which is our consent agenda. And the motion is that council hear and receive the general consent agenda, and further that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are those of the author and not verified or approved as being correct. I need a mover and a seconder to get this on the table. And that'll be Councillor Berman and Mayor Saunderson. Any discussion or any of these? Does anyone want to pull this item to discuss it? There's only one on the list. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Which brings us to item number 8. And I'm pretty sure we're welcoming the return of Director Culver for number 8, which is departmental updates. And I suspect we are going to hear from him on a couple of issues. Director Culver.
Thank you, Chair. Based on some questions that were forwarded to me by the chair, I do have a few updates. One of which is to do with the Maple Street Bike Priority Pilot Project. So I think based on some questions and maybe some concerns issued by Chair McLeod, the pilot project is, first of all, it's being led by the Public Works and Engineering Department as it's a road condition. Second of all, it is absolutely a pilot, and there is an engage page. If you go to the engage page on our Collingwood website, you can find your way there. I don't think it's very hard. And there's opportunities for people to provide feedback, and that feedback will be presented to council regarding consideration of that project being extended or expanded. So if anyone has concerns, we really do encourage you, or actually concerns or wants to say nice things about the project, they should attend to the engage page and submit it there, because that's where that data is being collected for additions into a report that will provide recommendations to council. On the another question that was asked was around Sunset Point and shoreline remediation work. So the large woody debris project is complete in its first stage. So this is on the west side of Sunset Point. We used trees that were required to be felled in order to allow for servicing of the new playground at Sunset Point. And those trees, instead of chipping them or discarding them, they were actually transformed into shoreline revetments under the guidance of our shoreline engineer. It's the first time that that's been done on an inland lake that we're aware of. It is a coastal treatment on the Pacific Ocean that we know of. We know of projects out there. So we're going to be measuring over time. We've recently had a conversation with the Saugeen and Ojibwe Nation Environment Office, who have a very keen interest in shoreline softening, and so it'll be an interesting project to watch and see how it evolves as those effects are measured. So that's one thing that's going on in shoreline revetment. There is other work that we will be doing in terms that's out of water work, including the block wall on the West Beach. The block wall on the West Beach, because it's out of water, we're able to do that without requiring an MNRF permit. In water work is proving a little more difficult, and it may be deferred to spring of next year because of our challenges in getting a permit in a timely enough fashion to hit the windows where that work can be accomplished. But I guess needless to say, and maybe the shorter version of this explanation would be that shoreline work at Sunset Point is ongoing, not been forgotten. We're trying to get as much done as we can before the expected October storms. But it is a long-term project that we're going to have to take on over probably many years. We're also doing a study of Millennium Park, because Millennium Park has challenges that need to be dealt with. And as well as people are probably also aware of the shoreline to the north of the Pine and Maple connection. Is also a trail closed there currently due to sinkholes. We're trying to get some design work and exploratory work done to figure out what needs to happen there. And we'll be back to council with some future budgets to help accomplish that protection.
Director Culver, oh, thank you. Mayor Saunderson has a question, and I have one also.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Dean. Dean, I'm wondering if you could send me some material on the revetments, the trees that you've installed on the beach there. The Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative has a binational panel on shoreline restoration and erosion prevention, and that has been a hot topic for discussion. So I'm the Canadian co-chair, and Mayor Jim Carruthers from Traverse City is on the US side, but that kind of information would be great for our discussion. And so if you could send me some information on that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee on this this topic? There's more to come. So then my question is along the same lines as the mayor's, Director Culver. So basically, I'm thinking that this pioneering revetment treatment is similar to the one that has been used by some of the scientists at the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, wherein they shove the tree into the side, into the shore, so that, but the roots are sticking out and doing the work of holding the shore. Is that basically it?
Yes and no, Chair. So the treatment that you're speaking of has a lot to do with river shorelines. And so river shorelines are a bit of a different problem, a different challenge. And those are quite common in all inland rivers. They happen naturally, actually. That's sort of what its biomimicry is what it actually is they're mimicking what would happen naturally and it would provide those fish habitats and some of those shoreline protections that we're seeking. Unfortunately, the shoreline of Georgian Bay doesn't act the same way as the riverbank, and so this is why we drew our inspiration from the south end of Vancouver Island, actually, where they had used large woody debris to protect the land from erosion based on the Pacific Ocean bashing on it on the south point. So we're basically acknowledging that Georgian Bay is a lot like an ocean, and trying something out that we believe has not been tried before. It is. You'll see it's not the largest section; it's a smaller section. If it's successful, I would love to see it happen more often, just because it does create more habitat, and it is a softer treatment. It allows for more things like root growth on the trees and shrubbery on the top of banks, which helps to stabilize the shore. So there's a lot of opportunity with it if it's successful, but it's going to be probably a discovery over time. Over the next few years, our shoreline engineer expects to be looking at it, apparently along with the Environment Office and others, to see if it will be successful and what the effects are, and if it's something that we can replicate elsewhere.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. The topic which interests me. Director Culver, you were also going to bring us up to date on what's there, because there's been lots of conversation regarding blue shores and the trails along the waterfront there, which have also suffered from high water levels. Perhaps you can clarify for us where we're at in this discussion.
Sure. So I have a hopefully a brief slideshow just to share with you, and I'll explain my way through it. But I'll start by saying that there was a misunderstanding that council was or committee, and then council were making any decisions around the Bay Loop Trail and the northern extent of that trail. And I just want to clarify on the record that that is not the case. We're not prepared at this point to bring you advice or a recommendation to make a decision on. So what I'm sharing with you today is really the same information that I'd be providing at the front of a recommendation in the future when we're prepared. But yeah, let me share my screen here if you're okay with that, and you can let me know if you can see that okay.
Yeah, we've got it.
Okay, now I just got to find my other screen that lets me change the channel. All right, let's try this instead. Okay, can you see that? Did it change for you? And you
yes.
Can see everything? Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so this is our trails network. As you can see, the Bay Loop Trail is actually over here on the eastern end. So I'll start by saying out of 60 plus kilometers of trail, we're talking about 200 meters of trail. It's a great trail, or it was a great trail. It provided views to the shoreline. Here it is in another aerial picture. You can see back in 2008, So these are taken from our GIS system, which kind of goes back in time and allows us the opportunity to go back in time. So you can see what it looked like in 2008. Here's what it looked like in 2016, and you can see that we're already starting to experience some challenges. And then in 2018, this was significant. And at this point, we were watching that trail pretty regularly because anything we did to it was basically becoming a big challenge. Let's see here if this will work. No. Okay. Can you see my video?
No, we cannot.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Does that work? Not yet.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll just pause it here. So you can see that basically the water now has come up and taken the trail that sort of went around in this direction is now gone. And I'll just keep flying here. This is really kind of the remnants of the trail. It's hard to see from this angle, but this shoreline here is quite hazardous to walk. A lot of loose and large boulders. We call them ankle breakers. Here's some more trail remnant here. And then again, the trail would normally have gone about 4 meters away from the base of this. So you can kind of see the edge of the rock there. At about 4 meters off of that, the trail would now be out into the water. And then it kind of loops back this way and meets that existing remnant again. I'm going to go back here just to show you. This revetment here is actually had to be done by Blue Shores in order to protect their stormwater outlet. And again, it wasn't something that we did. It was something they had to do in order to basically protect their assets. So let's see, how do I get out of here now? Okay. So even back in 2018, when we were dealing with the trail and trying to restore it periodically in order to make it a safe path, we were considering, what would need to happen if we weren't going to continually be fighting with Mother Nature, and it was going to require the installation of a seawall or retaining wall, which aside from being a huge expense for a 200-meter section of trail, it also we didn't have the room. The easement that the town has in that area is very specific. It follows exactly the path of the trail, so it doesn't move with the shoreline. It doesn't. The easement isn't to provide a trail. The easement is to provide land that a trail is on. So even now, even though we've had the trail closed for some time and we've had barriers up, we do know just anecdotally of individuals who are doing the loop and they're walking across private property. They're walking across land that the town doesn't have any easement over. It was originally brought to our attention. Actually, I'll just finish my slides because I think I've got all this stuff in here. I'm going to go off trail here. So we would need to have in-water works and we need to have consideration of the high water returning at some point in the future. So the very first conversation that we had to have was now that this trail is literally gone and based on our own experience, we believe that we're talking probably about a 10-year window potentially before there's any opportunity to have enough dry property to reestablish that easement and to reestablish a trail on that easement. We don't know for sure, but that's sort of our assessment based on our own experience. And it's a combination, not just of the water receding, but there being enough material restored, like returned to the shoreline for us to be able to build a trail on top of. Again, we go back to the challenge though, that we have to protect it from water. We're talking about a seawall and we don't have an easement allowance for that, nor do we have, nor is it a cheap alternative. So knowing that this trail actually is part of the connectivity between the east of Collingwood and the west of Collingwood, it's part of that trail connectivity that is a high priority for the Trails and Active Transportation Committee. We did enter and engage in a conversation with Blue Shores about would it be possible? And this was sort of, again, part of our research was just to sort of ask the question, which then became a matter of discussion, which then became a matter of concern by many of the residents in the area. But we asked the question about could an easement be established through the Blue Shores community to connect the trails at the midpoint Without that, what happens is we have to force people down Marine View Drive, which would still require an easement to trail along the shore, along the side of 26. So we had this conversation and we sort of said, like, what would it take to do that? And came away with some appetite for that potential shift. So we said, okay, great. The next conversation we need to have is with the Trails and Active Transportation Committee. And we had a conversation with the Trail Doctor, and they concurred that connectivity was a priority and that an easement through the property would be a way to accomplish that connection and ensure that we maintained our connectivity. This slide actually talks about some misunderstanding. So one of the early challenges that I was made aware of when I started with the town was that Blue Shores was experiencing people who were using that shoreline as beachfront and launching canoes or kayaks or using it as beachfront, like recreational beachfront, using it to swim, whatever. And we didn't have a way, because our easement is very specific. The property between the easement and the water, actually private property, and we had no way to say, you can't go there, you can go there. We basically had to leave this in Blue Shore's hand, but we also don't own any, like it's not under our insurance provisions, for example. So somebody injured there would be attaching themselves to private insurance. And as I mentioned earlier, sorry, I've lost my train of thought completely. Okay, I'm going to go back. Water views. So the trail actually only ever provided water views. That's all it was ever intended to do, and that's all it ever did. People who, again, left the trail were trespassing, whether they knew it or not. And yeah, so then the next thing is, so when we talk about these water views and these things that have been lost by Mother Nature taking back that trail or that land and removing our trail, it breaks it into two problems. One problem is a connectivity problem, which we've, again, done some research, begun discussing with Blue Shores, have begun discussing with the Trails and Active Transportation Committee, have begun trying to figure out a way to solve to have that connectivity remain or be reinstated. The other challenge, the other issue is the access to water views, which we know are highly valued by the community. And this is where the emails that you saw, they were about people who were fearing that their access to those water views was going to be lost. I don't have a way at this point in time, and again, definitely we're not prepared at this point in time to recommend any advice, but it is a significant challenge about what to do to connect. If we were to try and restore that Bay Loop North End extent, it's underwater. A lot of it is underwater, and the rest of it is hazardous. And so what we're left with are two stubs that go north-south, but to either side of the Blue Shores community. And we are definitely open to conversations with the local community about how to maintain those ideas, or if that's the right thing to do. And that's sort of where we're at right now in the conversation, is just trying to figure out what the next thing should do. So we still have barricades. We have 3 meters upon which we can tell people that the trail beyond is impassable. So we're doing that. We are committed to, throughout the winter, seeking legal advice from our insurance provider, having conversations with the communities, both of Blue Shores and Eden Oaks, trying to figure out what the right compromise is, and coming back to council with some report that tells us what we're going to do there. And the final point is, staff, we don't undervalue the opportunities for water views. We know this is part of the strategic plan. We know that it's part of the waterfront master plan. We're not trying to deny people access to the water, even if it's just visual access. But we do have some realities there that we're going to have to address. So hopefully that was a little bit scattered and broken. I'm sorry about that, but hopefully that was enough to help fill you in a bit.
Thank you. That was comprehensive and illuminating. So I will ask if any of our committee members have questions or queries regarding this, now that we have a little bit more information. And we have one attendee. So before I do that, Clerk Holmes, do I go to attendees at this time for a staff update or no?
Through yourself as chair, it's a staff member.
Oh, never mind then. Thank you. I will turn to our committee then and ask whether there are any questions of Director Culver on that topic. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing, Director Culver. CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Chair McLeod. When you're ready for another topic, I did have a very brief update on something else.
Wonderful. I will thank Director Culver unless there's any other questions from the committee to him. CAO Skinner.
All right, I did want to take this opportunity to remind everybody that they can register for our second annual Collingwood World Summit, which we're doing in collaboration with the Urban Economy Forum from the United Nations. It's related to an overall habitat in towns theme. So how we operate as towns to accomplish the sustainable development goals from the United Nations. And this year's themes are housing, assessing how we're doing from a quantitative perspective and finding resources to do projects. Regional and global connectivity, such as the connectivity we have here in South Georgian Bay, and how to encourage and embrace public participation and civic engagement. So the dates are October 7th and 8th, and there's a program full day virtually on both days. And it is maybe for the last time free to attend for anybody who is interested. Lots of information online. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Skinner. And that brings us to item number 9, which is public delegations, but we have no members of the public in attendance today. And so that brings us to item number 10, other business. Is there any other business from our committee today? Seeing none, that brings us to item 11 on our agenda, which is adjournment. Who would like to adjourn this meeting? There we go. Councillor Berman, all those in favor. And this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you for your kind attention.